today. Do not let our patients, our children, or our communities be attacked by opinion and rhetoric. We elected you to protect us, all of us. Please do your duty. Thank
Any
you.
questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next up, Dara Adkison, Trans Ohio.
Thank you, Chair Huffman, Vice Chair Johnson, Ranking Member Liston, and fellow respected committee members. My name is Dara Adkison, my pronouns are they, them, and today I stand before you on behalf of Trans Ohio, Ohio's first statewide trans-led equity organization of the past 20 years, dedicated to protecting and advancing the rights of trans, non-binary, intersex, and gender non-conforming people in Ohio. Now, how can we as a state expect to be growing and flourishing when we find ourselves with a proposed budget calling for things that will make our state so very much worse, causing so much harm to public health, instead of addressing the actual needs of Ohio's residents, families, children, elderly, and businesses? Ohioans have been reaching out to us, to you, to the governor ever since this budget was proposed. Attached to our testimony, you will find the testimony of over 130 Ohioans from 25 plus counties who were either unable to be here today or did not feel safe in doing so. They plead for you to listen to them, and we heed you to listen to their warning. Trans Ohio urges the committee to reject sections 757 to 759 of the proposed budget. This in particular is the definition of sex, stating that policy is the state of Ohio to recognize two sexes, male and female. These sexes are not changeable and are grounded in fundamental, incontrovertible reality. This language is not only factually incorrect, it is inherently dangerous. It contradicts well-established medical, psychological, and legal understanding of sex and gender. It denies the lived reality of thousands of Ohioans, including trans, non-binary, and intersex people. The idea that sex is binary and immutable is not supported by science. Regardless of whether or not it is your personal opinion, it is still the letter of the law and medical fact at present. Majority of medical associations, including but not limited to the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Medical Association, Endocrine Society, have all proven this to be true. The United States Supreme Court decision in Bostock v. Clayton County confirmed that discrimination against trans people is a form of sex discrimination. And further, courts across our state have concluded that Ohioans have upheld the right for individuals to update their identity documents reflecting their correct name and gender. Attempts to erase and deny these rights through budgetary language will most certainly invite legal challenge. It happens to be that we know that the language in this budget is drawn directly from executive order and pulled verbatim in that language. So what has happened with that executive order? There's actually 13 pending federal lawsuits against that specific language. Perhaps we're going to incite some fiscal hardship for Ohioans by having this language be in Ohio's budget? And what happens when trans intersex Ohioans aren't acknowledged legally by the Department of Health, by the Department of Aging, Department of Job and Family Services? What would happen to you if you didn't have the ability to get valid identification? And regardless of what you think about trans, intersex, non-binary people, they're still your constituents, they're still members of this state. And regardless of legal standing, will continue to be so. So why make their lives harder? Maybe listen to constituents. A small sample of some of the people that submitted testimony to, please take a look at the over 130 testimonies that are attached to ours. There's some really important feedback in there about how having section 757 to 759 will harm both businesses, families, and children. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Evelyn Holbert, Trans Unity Coalition.
Good afternoon, Chairman Huffman, Vice Chair Johnson, and members of the Senate Healthcare Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Evelyn Holbert. I am a transgender woman, and I am here today to speak against sections of HB96 concerning youth shelters, mental health facilities, the adoption of culturally and scientifically incorrect definitions of gender and sex, and the banning of menstrual products in men's restrooms. The list of the various provisions are provided in my testimony. I edited some of it down in the interest of time. It's something of a joke in some parts of the trans community that you either knew you were trans all your life or you didn't have a childhood. Obviously, this is an exaggeration, but what it actually means is that you are either born into a loving and accepting household or you are not. I was not born to a loving and accepting household. My parents are surely the most wretched people you would ever know. I faced constant ridicule over every little thing I said or did. Oftentimes, this ridicule was accompanied by beatings, destruction of the few possessions I had, or harm to my younger sister just to get at me. They routinely dehumanized me, stripped away my identity and any sense of self or safety I had. I began to believe them when they said I was stupid, confused, and disgusting. I began to believe them when they made fun of me for admitting I was suicidal and told me I should do it. I would never dream of assigning reason to child abuse, as it is inherently irrational. However, the topic of me being gay or girly came up very frequently. This was something even other kids at school talked about, and yes, even some of my teachers. See, I wasn't safe anywhere. Not at home, not with other family, not at school, and especially not in my own head. For years, I was burdened with the lessons the people in my life all taught me, that I was alone, that I deserved everything done to me, and that I should be ashamed of my feelings, and of course, to never be myself. I didn't know what a trans person was until I was 17 years old. By that time, I had so much hate in my heart, I completely dismissed the idea as gross and weird as all the people in my life had done to me before. The only thing that saved me from forever hating myself was getting to experience the stories of other trans people later on in my life. Hearing other people describe exactly how I had felt for so long was utterly surreal. I finally had a name for the deep, incomprehensible sadness I felt every day. Gender dysphoria is a killer. There's a certain anxiety and wrongness to it that I find extremely difficult to truly put into words. There was only one treatment for it, transitioning, a treatment that I sought out after years of suffering and darkness, a treatment that has completely saved my life and made me want to live it the best way that I can. This is the first time I've ever felt this way in my life. Earlier, I called child abuse inherently irrational, and I think everyone in this room would agree with that assessment. So then what would we call these provisions in HB96? Youth shelters will be faced with an impossible choice to refuse to help trans children and force them back to their abusers, people like my parents. Mental health facilities must no longer facilitate transitioning. Need I remind all of you, this is the only treatment for gender dysphoria. Untreated gender dysphoria leads to suicide. This is a death sentence. Onto the provision defining gender and sex. This is just further erasure of trans people, a declaration that trans kids can never be allowed to be themselves because look, we wrote it down in a bill hardly anyone is going to read. This provision stretches further, however. The absurd language of belonging at conception to the sex that produces the large or small reproductive cell not only makes every Ohioan female, which I suppose is a win for me in some bizarre way, but it also denies the existence of people born incapable of producing these reproductive cells and intersex people. Intersex people, which the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights described as, do not fit typical binary notions of male and female bodies. Lastly, the provision on banning menstrual products in the men's restroom. I feel even having to talk about something so absurd and irritating cheapens the testimony provided by everyone here today. This is an utterly bizarre pet issue born of a deranged, childish crash out over a public library not capitulating to the ignorant and short-sighted demands of a single individual. I'm sure Representative Creech thinks of himself as the next MLK as he prevents trans and intersex men, fathers with daughters, and men with disabled menstruating partners from accessing the same basic dignity provided to others. Originally in my testimony, I went on here to make more jokes at his expense, but I no longer find him the pathetic kind of funny I did before. Creech has been asked to step down amid allegations of sexual misconduct with a minor, something that I'm sure we're all aware of. Time and time again, it seems that the most staunch supporters of this kind of legislation are mired in allegations such as this. This is the person you align yourself with by supporting this law. As a survivor of sexual assault myself, I find the idea of someone with these allegations writing our laws completely intolerable. So I ask again, what would we call these provisions in HB 96? Gross, weird, stupid, confused, disgusting? I could go on for a very long time, as these are all extremely accurate, but I would choose just two words to leave you with: inherently irrational. Don't make the same mistakes we have in the past by making hate our laws. Get rid of this transphobic garbage, strike these provisions from HB 96, and don't let people who write our laws, who, by his own admission, sometimes would get into bed with a child while only wearing underwear, but never under the covers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next up, Bree Taylor, Trans Unity Coalition.
Chairman Huffman, Vice Chair Johnson, Ranking Member Liston, and members of the Senate Health Committee, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Bree Taylor. I am blessed by she, her pronouns. I founded and serve as Executive Director to the transgender advocacy nonprofit Trans Unity Coalition. Over the past month, our team has been providing awareness to the public and our lawmakers here, it seems at times, to the several anti-transgender provisions in this pretty large budget bill. And I appreciate the response and receptivity of those who have been interested in learning more, those who understand that there will be harm should these many provisions still be allowed to proceed. I was here yesterday speaking to the same committee, so I appreciate this second return. As a refresher, I did mention, and don't need to go over in its entirety once more, the youth homelessness provision, which will damage the funding to many youth shelters in Ohio. I say this as a former foster child myself, a person who has lived on the streets at times, who has been through shelters. I understand the need for shelters to support children and those out there who do not deserve what they go through. And this is rarefied in the queer community due to the statistically higher proportionality of queer youth who have to use shelter services, those who are kicked out of their homes. Yesterday, I shared another statistic, well, actually on Monday, I suppose, that 42% of queer youth make an attempt on their own lives. And in the time since then, when I mentioned that, that's almost 3,000 new individuals in this country. And it keeps ticking. In addition to the youth homelessness provision that I mentioned yesterday, though, there's one more that I wanted to talk about, which the House needlessly added in. Section 9, subsection 561, which is opposed to adding menstrual products in men's restrooms, which in full wording says, no government entity shall place menstrual products in men's restrooms of a public building. Transgender men can absolutely require these. So can fathers who may need to grab some of these items for their children. This is just a physiological and practical truth and not one that is erasable by sheer policy alone. As a budget bill, legislators should be more focused on improving Ohio and not providing a soapbox for creepy creech who simply cut a deal to snuck this omnibus in at the last minute, especially not someone of this moral turpitude as the news we have all heard today broke out. Representative Creech's provision is also sloppy. If a government entity cannot place these products, Trans Unity Coalition is happy to implement our Men's Stroll program in Ohio, where we educate the public on how to legally and safely distribute crowdsourced menstrual materials into men's restrooms and other spaces in a legally compliant manner. Beyond that, enforcement costs alone make this unnecessary as a legal escalation. If a government entity cannot place them, the people will, and we will have Representative Creech to thank for that. Please reconsider this provision, youth homelessness, and the many other anti-transgender provisions in House Budget Bill 96. Thank you for your time.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Cookie Dixon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Huffman, Vice Chair Johnson, Ranking Member Liston, and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to voice my concerns. Queer youth are almost always at a disadvantage compared to their peers, and the rate of homelessness is far above that of their straight and cisgender peers. A staggering 28% of queer youth have reported experiencing homelessness or housing instability, and this statistic jumps up to around 38% for transgender youth. A majority of this is from unsupportive parents kicking their child out on the streets for their identity. Homeless shelters are imperative to trans youth for this reason. The solution is clear, and it is not to refuse affirmation to a trans child. Refusing to fund youth shelters that affirm transition only contributes to the problem and will only lead to an increase of trans youth being hurt, killed, arrested, and generally neglected on the streets. Best case scenario for these children, they are either forcibly detransitioned or the shelter hides their identity, both of which can lead to worse issues down the line. This is a clear pattern we have seen before. Access to services is denied to trans youth under the guise of protecting them. The provisions are then pushed forward to be even more broad, and then provisions are put in place restricting these rights for trans adults as well. This has been done countless times with restrictions on sports participation, restrictions on gender-affirming care, restrictions on access to public restrooms, and now proposed restrictions to homeless shelters. Let me put this clearly. This will kill trans youth. Be it suicide or hate crime, this will exacerbate the already disconcertingly high rates of death for trans youth. This pattern continues with another provision in this bill, which restricts the recognized sexes to male and female. This completely erases legal recognition of transgender, non-binary, intersex, and other individuals. Sex wasn't even included on passports until relatively recently, with passports from as recently as the 1960s lacking sex designations. Our country thrived for nearly 200 years before even needing to recognize sex. This provision has no place to exist within a funding bill, and its purpose is clear: an attempt to invalidate and continue to restrict the rights of trans individuals. Finally, the provision banning menstrual products in men's restrooms is a clear swipe at transgender men. There is no reason menstrual products should be completely barred from men's restrooms, and only further restricts access to these products that are already difficult to find even in women's restrooms. Not only is access to these products helpful for transgender men, it can be helpful for cisgender women. If the women's restroom has run out, then she can ask someone to get one from the men's. If the women's restroom is blocked off from maintenance or some other common occurrence, and she has to go to the men's, then she still has access to the accommodations she needs. I hope you can choose to help save the lives of transgender youth, choose to continue recognizing us as people, and choose to allow trans men the accommodations they need. Thank you.
All right. Any questions of the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Leah Bueller, Clark County Combined Health District.
Chair Huffman, Vice Chair Johnson, Ranking Member Liston, and members of the Senate Health Committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today on behalf of the Clark County Combined Health District Tobacco Grant Program. My name is Leah Baylor, and I've been a health educator for 3 years at the Health District, located in Springfield, Ohio. My role there at the Health Department is coordinating a prevention grant which focuses on reducing the negative impact of tobacco use on health and the well-being of our community members in Clark County. So I'm here today to provide insight into what issues we're dealing with at the local
Zero. This is the language that would reinsert the vapor retailer registry program in section 3701.842. This registry has leased per year cut, cutting it from $7.5 million to $6 million. Keep in mind, 2 years ago, prior to House Bill 33, we also asked for the support of cardiac arrest registry to enhance survival. It is exactly as it sounds. This is a registry program for EMS agencies across the state of Ohio to belong. They're born.
Donna Evangeline Hartman, and I'm a 45-year-old transgender woman from Dayton, Ohio. I recently became disabled through SSDI, and I have been a taxpayer and a constituent since I started working at age 16. But recently, a question came into my mind because of the onslaught of legislation against transgender people. If we don't exist, if we've been declared as non-existent, should we even be paying taxes? It doesn't make sense to keep doing that. We're literally paying for somebody to say that we don't exist. But the fact is that we will, because we care about our neighbors and we care about investing in the system that supports us, even if we're no longer existing. Even if it helps our neighbors, it's still worth investing and continuing to pay our taxes. I didn't choose to be this way, and it hurts that so many people seem to think that this is a choice, that this is something that people just decide one day or have some sort of mental illness and they decide that they are something else. And that's not really what this is. This is us finally figuring out who we are and living who we are instead of pretending that we're something that everybody else says that we're supposed to be. And that's really what this is about, is people defining us into little boxes that make it convenient or nice for them, that they think, oh, this person is born with this genitalia, they're male. That's not always true. And the fact that we now have legislation that's about to get passed, if the Senate passes this as it is, means that I don't exist and people who are intersex don't exist, and they have no choice in that either. They're born with differing genitalia, they're born with differing chromosomes. They might look female, but they have XY chromosomes, or they might look male and they have XX chromosomes. It's not black and white, it's not binary, and science has known that for decades. So why this is up for debate and why somebody at the executive level in the federal government decided that they needed to define us this way and that the state is capitulating to that, I don't know why this is necessary, but it only serves to hurt. And if the inhumanity is the point, then I guess they've made their point. But for those of us who are still human beings, for those of us who still care about our neighbors and our peers, please reconsider. Please take this legislation out of the bill. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next up, David Rierson, United Way of Central Ohio. And next up after that is Fred Strayhorn.
Good afternoon, Chair Huffman and members of the Senate Health Committee. My name is David Ryerson, and I'm the